The next session is our student panel. These are undergraduate students. And the idea is that we can hear from students about the teaching practices that best enable them to learn or maybe hamper their learning, and really get, the student perspective, which I think is a very important voice. I wanted you to know that in order to select the panel, we reached out to lots of different offices on campus that regularly interact with our undergraduates and asked them for nominations. So like writing programs, the Learning Assistant Program, Academic Advancement Program, Undergraduate Research Center, and others. And we got lots of nominations. So then we were faced with, this embarrassment of riches and had to select among them and tried to make sure that we had a broad selection of majors. And that's how we ended up with the panel that you see before you. We've shared 3 questions with the panelists in advance, and there will also be opportunities for questions from the audience interspersed with those. So let's start with brief introductions, just your name, your major, and something you'd like the audience to know about you. We can maybe start with Chinyere.
Sure.
Okay, can you all hear me well? Yeah? Awesome. Okay, I'm Chinyere. I am a 4th year undergraduate studying neuroscience as a major and African American studies as a minor. One thing that I guess you guys could know about me, I'm in the USIE program, undergraduate my professor's back here, of undergraduate student initiated education. So for the last year, I've been developing a course that I'm getting ready to teach, a 1-unit seminar in the spring.
Hi, everyone. My name is Colin. I'm a 4th year English major. I am also in the USIE program with Chinyere. I've also worked as a tutor on this campus and the campus I transferred from. I've been a tutor now for about 4 years, and I will be starting grad school next year. I love being an educator, and I'm excited to be here.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Sydney Austin. I'm a 4th year mechanical engineering major. Yeah, actually, Professor Levine was my thermodynamics professor. But I am the current president of the National Society of Black Engineers. I am also part of the UC Leads program, which is designed for getting minority students acclimated to research so that they go on to get graduate degrees. And I hope to go to graduate school and possibly pursue a career in teaching.
Hi, my name is Max Dunsker. I'm an undergraduate 4th year studying economics and international development studies with a minor in geospatial information systems. I have been involved a lot with our undergraduate research center over the course of these past 2 years, and I would say that's been the most enriching part of my education at UCLA so far.
Hi, my name is Caitlin Peterson. I'm a 3rd year double majoring in English and communications. I work at the Writing Center, so I've definitely helped with all of the essays in the world, grad school applications and essays and personal statements, you name it. And I hope to go in entertainment. I would love to be a songwriter, but we all know that's not very possible in LA. So for now, entertainment is what I would love to be in.
Hi, my name is Dominic Diaz. I'm an applied math and physics double major. Something I'd like you to know is I am part of the Learning Assistant Program. and we try to make lower division STEM courses more inclusive and interactive.
Awesome. I mean, what a great array of interests. And yeah, absolutely. I know. Okay, so the first question goes to Colin, Chinyere, and Sydney, and that is, what was your best learning experience at UCLA and why? So who would like to begin among that group? Chinyere, okay.
So for my best learning experience, I think back way long ago to 2nd year. And it was a course that I was taking in civic engagement. It was civic engagement as philanthropy. And it was a really interesting course because it was only 20 people and we were a funding board, which is kind of crazy to think. So we had $100,000 of real money that we were able to donate to local nonprofits in the greater Los Angeles area. And so what was really interesting about the course is because there was this greater purpose besides just getting a grade, it made it so much more motivating for us as students, because here we are thinking, what qualifies us to have this enormous opportunity? But because we knew that our work in the class was tied to something that was so much bigger than us, it motivated us even more to make sure we were doing things like funding reports and site visits and things like that, because we saw how the work we were doing in class was directly related to work beyond UCLA.
I would definitely say one of my best experiences was a class I took last quarter. It was a literature class, and I noticed consistently the professor was really great at encouraging questions. And then from there, she was even better at turning those questions back onto the group. Often the class would have really great discussions based off of questions that students in the class had brought to the professor. She didn't, frankly, deliver a lot of answers or interpretations, but she facilitated our discussion very, very well. There are a lot of activities where we would, kind of similar to like a think, pair, share, or we would do, the group equivalent, and then we would all kind of report. But I just noticed that being in that class and mentally gearing myself up to go to class, I began to then be more aware of the questions that I was having as I was reading the literature. And so then I started to be thinking more about what am I curious about right now? What do I not understand? What can I explore further, potentially, for research, whatever it may be, extremely valuable for my education.
Okay. I would say one of the most inspiring learning experiences I've had at UCLA actually happened this quarter. I'm taking a manufacturing class as part of my major, and we have a project assigned to it, and we have to go to the machine shop and basically build a small chair out of aluminum metal. And at first, this was a really daunting task because I've never worked in a machine shop before, had no idea what the tools were or anything. And the first few days were really difficult because the technicians there were not incredibly helpful. But then the second week, there was a new tech, and it was amazing getting the chance to work with him because it sort of made machining feel like art. It was no longer a chore that I had to get up early to do. And like seeing him machine made me want to emulate the skills he had or the way he was doing the machining. And it was really helpful because at one point he told me and my partner, we were doing the machining and we were getting the results that we wanted. And he said, like, what you're doing right now is good and it will get you the results that you want. But now that you're more comfortable with this, why don't we make you master machiners? So we're going to try this challenging step that's also a shortcut. And then it made our part look like absolutely beautiful. And it was a lot of fun because he recognized that we were getting better or more comfortable and then took the extra step to challenge us, even though he didn't have to. So I would say I really like it when teachers recognize that you have the skill set and want to give you more to build on it instead of just what's going to get you the grade.
Wow, that's awesome. So are there any follow-up questions from the audience on the theme of best learning experiences? And potentially anyone could answer. Yes. The question is about the example of the professor who got the students to ask questions. How did she make that happen? What strategies did she use? Strategies did she use to make that happen? I think that was basically it.
So one thing was that she was very engaging and confident and relaxed and approachable. I mean, oftentimes college classrooms can be intimidating and people want to impress the professor and everything like that. She, I think, very successfully made us all feel very comfortable not being worried about whether we were asking smart questions, but just starting with just real questions, and it was kind of this weird thing where it was like, I knew well enough that she's an expert. She knows. She could give me all sorts of answers to any question I would have. But she would always kind of do this thing where someone would say, I really didn't understand what this weird episode with that strange animal meant. And she would be like, yeah, what did that mean? And then she would say, what do you guys think? And like in the best way, it was a little hokey, but then like it was extremely effective because like I could tell that she had likely had that experience at one time in her life too, even though now she's an experienced scholar and of course is an incredible, brilliant mind. But I'm sure at one point she was in the same situation we all were in, where we were just kind of like, what's going on here? And so we all, I think, connected through that.
So how can we make group work more fair? Sometimes students are not so excited about group work. How can we improve that? Anyone?
One of the things that I've seen in the better experiences that I've had with group work is when it seems like there's a lot of purpose behind it. So when we go into the group work saying, this is a specific project that we're trying to address, and this is how everyone can contribute. So you take into consideration what everyone has as their unique skill set. And then you don't just start with that, but you continue to hold each other accountable. So I've had different situations where in the process of doing this group work, we also know that, okay, if I'm not holding up my end of the bargain, this is going to be written about in some sort of survey or whatever that may be, because then it allows people to contribute in whatever unique way they can, but also making sure that we're still achieving whatever the focus of the group project is.
Anyone else want to speak to that one? Okay. Okay.
I was just saying, I know for me personally, group work feels unfair when my grade depends on all of us together. Like I think group work as a collaborative practice in the classroom for us to engage with the material is always something I enjoy. But like when it's a project where my grade, the final grade for the project depends on everyone having contributed to something, that's just like recipe for disaster in my book. That's just been my experience with that.
Okay. Anyone else want to say something about group work? All right. There was a question here. Sorry. So the question is, in the courses that were a great experience, what was the balance in your effort or your attention between getting a good grade and learning? I'm paraphrasing. I don't remember exactly what you said. And because the observation is that sometimes efforts to get a good grade get in the way of learning. Yes. Go ahead, Caitlin.
I would say there are courses where I have focused more on actually learning the material and courses where it's just been about the grade. And really what made the difference was if the professor said that they cared more about us learning the material and showed active effort to give us like the resources to expand further on it. Because there are some professors who it's, at least in engineering, it seems like they don't have time to sit down with you or help you, or not just professors too, but also TAs. If I've had a really good TA who will take the time and sit down and really in discussion sections or in lectures really points out the teaching and the strategies behind it, or like how to think about things instead of, oh yeah, you just look at this area, but instead go into why you look at that area, why it physically makes sense. It makes the class more enjoyable, and it also makes me want to learn more. And also things that are hands-on, I typically give more effort to, like this machining project. I literally I had to skip a couple lectures to work on that project, and that was just more interesting because it's something you're watching being built and you see your accomplishments directly, and it's not just writing computations. So
Caitlin, would you like to answer?
One of my favorite classes is actually one that I really struggled with because it was a literature class with text in the 20s, so it had Great Gatsby, but there's so much to unpack in Great Gatsby. However, you can read it 100 times and you still discover new things. But I was really struggling to really do well on the essay and to really understand, what am I trying to say? What is this text trying to say? And so my professor, who was one of my favorites in the entire English department, he added probably 2 extra office hours for me to come in and was really approachable and very encouraging as I struggled with my own questions and as I struggled to write my paper. And so by the end of it, when I turned in my essay, I came to a point where I was like, I've really enriched my understanding and my knowledge of this. And I feel like in my head, I had an A because I gave my entire effort and I learned so much from this class because of the effort that this teacher and because of the bond and connection that he really had with the text that really inspired me to work harder and to really try to learn this material. So for me, it's all about that effort that the teacher puts in that makes me work harder, and it makes me feel like I've excelled in that class as well.
Thank you. Yes, Dominic?
So I did want to expand a little bit about that because I think that a really good teacher is also very passionate about the thing that they're teaching. And if they're very passionate about whatever they're teaching, it's going to encourage me to be a lot more passionate about what I'm learning as well. And I think that really helps me as a student focus more on learning the material than getting the A, for me at least.
Any other? Max? Yeah.
Some of my best experiences in this regard are in the geospatial curriculum at UCLA. And it's a very odd curriculum. They're all online courses, and it's structured in a way that each week you're presented with a puzzle that you have to solve. And I've found when there's not a right and wrong way to do a certain puzzle or assignment, whether that's coding a chunk of code to run a program or making a map that displays a certain phenomenon, that flexibility makes me focus less on the grade and more about the creativity that I'm putting into it to try to create a product that I'm proud of. And at that point, if I've created something with my own 10 fingers typing on a keyboard that I find reflects my aptitude at it, it doesn't quite matter the grade that I've received. So I know that I've fulfilled my duty to myself.
Wow. Okay, one last question before we go to the next set. No, go ahead. So this is following up on the group work and looking for more pointers to make group activities successful.
I definitely have one for this. The right to self-determination. Whether that's not necessarily saying, okay, pair up with your friends, but I found the best groups that I've been in have been centered around a similar interest in whatever that project will be. So whether that's the professor surveying the class saying, these are the available topics, out of these, what are you interested in? And then allowing students within those interest groups to discuss, figure out what they share in common in their academic interests, and then pursue a group project based on that.
Anyone else?
I think for me, it's a little similar to what you've described, but I think when there's opportunities for when you recognize what it is you're getting from the group, the value of it. So you have opportunities to exercise your own leadership and individuality within it, but you see that there's something core to the group work. A lot of times it seems like things are made to be group work just because they're being made that way without a real intention behind it. But when we're able to kind of unpack and see, okay, this is what this person's bringing, this is what this person's bringing, then you see that why it's a team and not just something that's being done just to do something.
Thank you. Oh, yes, Erin?
Actually, I was just wondering if Dominic, just as a little plug for the Learning Assistance Program, if you could just take a minute to talk about the role of LAs in facilitating group work and sort of helping to overcome some of these barriers when it comes to, working in a group productively.
Yeah. So as a learning assistant, I've been a learning assistant for too many quarters now, for the physics department and a little bit for the math department. And one of the things we do is we really try to encourage our students to work together on the problems. Can you repeat what the...
Well, just more the kind, and I think this gets at kind of what Colin was getting at with his favorite teacher, the kinds of questions and the strategies that you use to really help foster that collaborative spirit in the group.
Yeah, so I think walking around in a discussion section as a learning assistant, one way that I've really tried to encourage groups to work together is maybe I'll start with one student, see where they're confused, and then maybe help them a little bit, but then also ask their peers, did you have the same question? And try to actually encourage them to work together to solve the problem. And sometimes one person might be able to pull the group a little further, but together, trying to encourage all of those students to work together, they will be able to bring together all their experiences to solve the problem. And encouraging them to work together is a really important thing. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And now the next question, which goes to Dominic, Caitlin, and Max, is What obstacles have you encountered that became a barrier to your learning as a student at UCLA? How did you overcome those obstacles? And what do you wish your instructor could have done differently to improve your learning?
So I'll start. I think the biggest barrier to my learning has been in my first year of college, I had a very fixed mindset. And for those of you who don't know what a fixed mindset is, it's let's say I'm taking a course, I don't do well on the first midterm exam, then I'll think maybe I'm not cut out for chemistry or statistics or engineering or musicology. And taking that failure as though I'm not going to do well in the class. But then sometime around my second year of college, I had a shift in my mindset to having a more growth mindset and taking those failures as a learning experience to figure out where I need to be doing things differently in a course. And so with a more growth mindset, I would take an exam, maybe not do so well on it, and then think to myself, what can I be doing differently in terms of my studying to do well the next time? And I think a really simple thing that instructors can do to help encourage this in their students is, let's say you're passing back exams, you can address the students who maybe didn't do so well and say, I know many of you may not have gotten the grades you had hoped for, but don't take this as if you're not going to do well in the course. Take this as a learning experience to figure out how you might need to study differently for the next assessment.
So I think this was last year. Actually my freshman year, I don't remember. It all blurs together. But I had a professor who was brilliant, but the way she structured her lectures was off of slides and off of a very strict strategy of the way that she was presenting information. And when she would ask questions, no one would really answer them. So it was a little awkward in class with a big lecture when it would take about like 30 to 45 seconds, which seems like a long time when you're sitting in that lecture when it's really quiet, and no one would really be engaged. And so instead of responding to this lack of connection, she would really just keep going with the same, strategy and the same PowerPoint slides. And I think for me, that was very difficult because I was really interested in the material and the content was fascinating, but I didn't really have as much motivation to really keep working at it because I felt like she didn't really have the same passion and enthusiasm that I wanted my professor to have. So although she's definitely brilliant, I definitely would recommend for any instructors, if something's not working with students, don't give up and keep trying different ways to engage your students. If she had shown a little more passion off of the slides and maybe engage through interactions and discussions and ask people, okay, what does it say about religion? What does it say about emotional capacities? What does it say about love? Things that really relate to students and that really gauge their interests. I think that could have made it a lot more productive of a discussion, and it would have inspired us to also work harder and really pursue the material a little more willingly.
So I've had a lot of barriers, but I would say the biggest one was coming in and it being reinforced in my freshman year classes of 400 people or so, that the classroom was the only place for learning to get done. As I've moved on throughout UCLA, I've discovered these other resources, whether that be lecture series or research grant opportunities, or just going to a professor's office hours to learn what they're doing. But insisting, based on my first year course load, I didn't have a class under 200 people. And so I thought the only way to connect with material was to go to lecture, sit for the 2 hours, write down my notes, and then reread them eventually. But what some professors have done over time is either sponsor me to do research projects with them or invite us to their lecture on campus. And conceptualizing learning in this different way, where it's not just about going to the classroom and eating what you're being fed, but going and discovering what else is out there, what the teacher knows but isn't talking about with you in this lower division lecture.
Wow. Okay, great. Any questions to follow up on the theme of barriers or things we could be doing better? Yes.
How do we get students to go to office hours?
How do we get students to... How do we get students to go to office hours? Anyone?
You go ahead.
I would say for professors' office hours, it's very intimidating because if you have questions, it's easy to think, or it's easy to be afraid to show your professor that you do not understand the material back to front, even though that's insane because I don't think professors expect you to know the material that well the first time around. But you don't want to show like the weakness, or you don't want your questions to be looked at as a failure in understanding. So being someone who encourages questions during the lectures, or like I always go to TA or professor office hours who view questions more as critical thinking rather than a weakness in understanding. And then also I typically go to office hours whenever we have group projects, and it's like for my class this quarter, we have a group project and going to office hours is extra credit for the project. But even so, I think it would have, without the extra credit, we would all be more comfortable going to office hours as a group rather than going by ourselves, because when you go as a group, it's you all have questions, you know that there are other people there that are struggling with the same material that you're struggling with, and it's not a weakness on your part specifically.
I have worked with a professor who I have gone out of my way to attend their office hours over the past couple of years. And one reason I've loved to talk with this professor is because he sort of shamelessly will speak over my head, not because like he doesn't like me or anything, but because it's kind of what I go there to ask him about. Like I'm asking him for really the nitty gritty sort of how would he describe whatever concept I'm trying to grapple with. So when, though, it may be a professor is doing that without realizing that they are speaking on a level far above what the student is even kind of getting little pieces out of, then I think it may be harder for the students to understand what tangible thing they've pulled away from their visit in office hours. And so the way that translates into kind of the way I think about when I work as a tutor is I've been working more on trying to identify what's the teachable moment, what's the little stretch that I can achieve with the student right now that hopefully will result in them feeling like they have achieved a tangible progress with their essay or whatever. And then ideally, my thinking is that then they will come back rather than kind of approaching it as I have before when I was less experienced, of just being like, okay, well, you need to do this, 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 and this, and this. And they're still working on just kind of understanding maybe the first thing that I've brought up. So as a technique, maybe if professors are thinking about what is the teachable moment with this student right now, where's the small gap that we could fill in together right now, and then I guess the idea I had is then that seems like a more productive visit, which then will then encourage return visits. Also, I thought, you guys could offer candy or something too.
Okay, Chineri.
Candy is definitely a good one. That's definitely gotten me to some office hours. But I think that when you start, one of the things that has really attracted me to office hours from time to time is when the professors begin lecture or incorporate some time in their lecture asking us, where are you? Like, what don't you know? And even though that seems like kind of a crazy thing, especially if you feel like you've been going over a topic multiple times, when professors are able to just allow us to be honest and be like, you know what, I really don't understand what's going on. It breaks down some of that barrier that seems like, the professor knows so much and expects us to know everything. Because I've definitely gone to office hours where that was the sort of relationship that was established, where questions were asked and it seemed like it wasn't getting broken down. But when you do allow students to be honest, and it, like I said, it starts in the lecture, then students kind of understand, okay, this is someone that really does want to make sure I'm learning the material. And even if that's going to take a little bit longer, they're willing to bring it down to a level that I understand.
Max?
One thing that I found really attracted me to some professors' office hours versus others are the ones that clarified that going to office hours wasn't solely about talking about the course or clarifying the material you learned. The thing that first got me to really go to the office hours of all my professors in a quarter was when I was building a reading list for the summer. And I said, all right, these are smart people, and they don't necessarily need me to ask them questions at their office hours about the material, but seem just willing to talk and to spread their knowledge. And so exuding the idea that your office hours isn't solely about asking questions about whatever the class on the material is, but instead about being able to interact with an academic mind and to pick a brain. I found that was definitely something that made me want to go to office hours more than just asking questions about the upcoming exams.
The question is, are there any unique challenges for transfer students? Do we have a transfer student here?
Yeah, I'm a transfer
Okay.
student. It's hard to say because I'm only a transfer student. But I do feel like I had to hit the ground running. But there is this different thing where it's like I definitely have noticed. I'm also a non-traditional student, so I'm older. So when I came back to school, I knew I wanted to go for an English PhD, and I've been working towards that for a number of years now. But I do notice amongst other transfer students, they usually know what they want to do, and they have worked to get here because they knew they wanted to major in English or they wanted to major in whatever it was. And so I do notice some of my peers have kind of like, gone towards doing English, likely because they're passionate about it. They love it. But I don't know, unique challenges. I guess I had a sense of like, I wish I had more time. I wish I had more time here. I wish I could have, just for one, taken more classes, but just had more time to develop better relationships with people in the department, work more closely with other professors. That'll probably be my biggest regret leaving, is that there are a lot of professors who I did not get to work as closely with as I would have liked to. I don't know how that translates to teaching practices, but yeah, there's probably, challenges.
Thank you. Okay, one more question on this topic.
The faculty solicit your feedback, or let you tell them where you are, and what's going on with you, or if you come to office hours and it's a chance to just talk rather than specifically achieve something related to the class. So, and you've also talked about the challenges of large courses and, just time. So do you have any ideas about what professors could do to give you the space, or how they could ask you for your input, right? Given that it's intimidating to raise your hand, a couple of you have said this in a large lecture class, or intimidating to go to office hours, like what other methods have you seen, or could you think of something that would be good to allow you that chance to talk back to them? We'll see.
I know I've had, this is a really great question. I've had some professors who have taken use of a couple of things. So there's always like CCLE, and I've had professors use that as a way to ask, do surveys and things like that. And typically I know sometimes students are a little reluctant to do that, but when it is tied to something like extra credit or something that they get tangible back from that, showing that it's important to the educator, because then we know, okay, I'm going to get something from doing this, and I also get to share my opinion at the same time. But then taking that a step further, saying, addressing whatever was brought up. So if you see that people mentioned, I'm really not understanding this thing, then you bring it up in class and say, this is something that everyone kind of mentioned. Is this where you're feeling? Because then it shows that you didn't just have us do it just to do it, but that you actually read it and you're trying to modify based off of that. The other thing is I know a lot of professors use things like think pair share, where you're working in your groups or the person next to you and asking like, okay, what don't you get? What don't you get? And so then if it does come to giving feedback right then and there, it doesn't seem like it's just you saying this, because you've now talked to other people and you've kind of consolidated an answer.
Anyone else?
I was amazed this quarter when I had a professor give a survey in a class. It was fourth week, so we had learned her teaching style, and she gave us a venue to then voice our frustrations about what was happening. And I was just blown away, because in the econ department, you get your syllabus, and that's what's going to happen for the next 10 weeks. And so for her to switch horses midstream was shocking, because not only did she give this survey to us, but she dedicated 45 minutes of a class, which is about a quarter of the time we have with her in a week, to going over said survey, asking for specifics about our grievances, and then really implementing those changes, whether that was modifying her PowerPoints to be more succinct or giving more real world examples or just slowing down a little bit. She really took our feedback and put it into practice, which was incredibly encouraging.
Awesome. Other comment? Okay.
Yeah, I would say though, one caution to doing surveys is I've had a professor who did surveys, I think twice throughout the quarter, and both times she spent a good chunk of the lecture basically telling us why what we said was wrong or not valid, or why what she was doing was already, like, we shouldn't be complaining about this. And I feel like it made a lot of us upset because we were like, we're telling you very valid specifics about things that we don't understand, and you're just saying, well, I went over this, so you should get it. It's on you at this point, or you should study harder. So if you're going to do a survey, like, I feel like you have to then really have that commitment to implementing what your students say, or at least not turning it back on them and saying, well, it's all your fault, really. I'm good.
Yeah, words to the wise. Okay. So the last question is just, what advice might you offer UCLA instructors that, based on your own experiences as a student, could help them best support learning in their classes? And we have about 7 minutes so everybody give a brief answer to that one. Who would like to begin?
So I think I would really like to see a little bit more of interaction between the students and the material in lecture. I think it's really good for a lecturer to ask questions towards their students to see whether they're really understanding it as well as you really think they are. And I think it also helps students know where you expect them to be as well. So it's really a win-win, adding a little bit more interaction between students and the material in lecture.
I would say rediscover your passion for what you're teaching, because it really shows to your students. I think in my tutoring sessions, the most successful ones have been when we're both just so excited about the material and we already have that bond between us because we both respect each other, we both trust each other, and that makes it very successful for whenever the student is trying to write something. They work harder because they know that, they trust my opinion, I trust what they're doing, and it's a mutual respect. And so if you love what you do and you love what you teach, it's really going to show to your students. And so I really think that it doesn't hurt to just sit down with yourself and be like, why am I teaching this? Why do I love this? And it's good for you and it's good for us as well.
I would just encourage connecting the knowledge that you're teaching these students to skills in the real world, or at least how this knowledge can become a tool in their own research. Connecting it to something bigger than just that one class will not make the person just binge study for the final. And then if you ask them a question next quarter, they have no clue about anything about your course. Because if you can connect that knowledge to something greater, something that they can use every day or just in a special occasion on a project, I think it'll resonate a lot more with those students.
I would say please put your resources online. Some of the best classes some of the classes I've done the best in had recorded lectures for each lecture, and it was really helpful because I feel like, especially with college students nowadays, a lot of us feel pressured to be involved in like 50 different projects, especially in the engineering department. Every interview you go to, you have to be part of a technical club, you have to be the leader of a club, you have to have an internship. So there's a lot of obligations pulling us out of lecture. And a lot of my lecturers, when I've asked, can you put something online, say, well, it's an 8 a.m., people won't come anymore. But a lot of students, myself included, see the value of going and being there in person for lectures. So, but at the same time, sometimes I have to miss them. Last quarter and this quarter, I missed multiple lectures for conferences. So just having that material online ready for me when I know that I'm not going to be there is really helpful. And also going more in depth or answering those questions that are more theory based online that maybe you can't get to in lecture because you have to teach the basics in lecture, but you can go into why these things make sense online is also really helpful.
I would say collaborate with your students on creating the best learning environment. Be transparent about how they can participate in achieving the goals that you want and that they want. Attraction is better than promotion. Openness, honesty about what the classroom can achieve together and how you as a professor can contribute, and then how the students can kind of contribute as well. I mean, everybody sort of has a responsibility in that room to do something. And if everybody's on the same page about how they can successfully do it, then it seems like it's just going to work better. That's been my experience in my favorites.
I would say tie everything back to a purpose. At the end of the day, kind of echoing what people have said so far, we're not going to remember everything from the class, unfortunately. We want to, but we won't. So when you have it tied back to what is the most important thing, I think we learned a lot about like an elevator pitch, right? If there's one thing that you want the students to remember from the class, what is that? And that one thing, have that tied to everything that you're trying to do. That might be more difficult, but when you show students that we are connecting things back to the class, that these aren't just disconnected ideas, but that everything has a central focus, and that central focus is something that they can take with them outside of the class, I think that creates the best learning experience.
Thank you all. Let's try one final question for the panel. Yes, Muriel. So briefly, the question is, how do you feel about making office hours mandatory?
You can just come, wave, hello, introduce yourself, and go if you want. You don't have to stay. But a lot of people choose to hang out.
I would say please make it convenient for your students. I commute from Long Beach, so anytime I need to come on campus when it's not for class or for work, it's something I need to plan ahead of time.
Many appointments.
Sounds like fun.
I'm exhausted.
I actually think this is a really interesting idea. I don't think I've heard of this before, but I'm kind of excited by it because it shows that you want to get to know us, because sometimes in classrooms, it seems like, you're putting out the office hours, but you don't really want us to come. And then we don't really want to come. But when you say, no, I want you to come, I'm going to be there. And this is like something I'm expecting of you. Then it kind of, again, starts breaking down those barriers. And we see that you're just like us, like, you're a real person. And yeah, I see you not. Yeah. So I think it's a great idea. I think when you, allow students to also like just talk about anything, like I think what was mentioned earlier, then it allows us to connect with you on a deeper level.
Anyone else?
I think it's an awesome idea. The one caution I would have is just to make sure that you're trying to nurture an individual connection with the student who's coming. Because I would feel in a group of 10 people in a professor's office hour, I would shrink because there are so many other people, and I would hate to dominate that conversation in any way in the form of maybe I don't speak at all and I'm unable to connect with you totally.
Well, at least I have them talk to each other. If there's a really big group, everybody needs to come and introduce themselves to each other. One group said, all right, everybody has to say one fact about him or herself. And so there is, even if there's not a direct connection, if they connect with each other, I'm really happy.
Yeah, then that's terrific.
Anyone else comment on this? No, it seems like you've passed, Muriel. I think they've endorsed your efforts. All right. Well, I want to thank you all so much for your insights to inform the way we teach.